When people hear the story of the Spanish conquest of the Aztec Empire, it often sounds impossible. How could a small force of around 500 Spanish soldiers, led by Hernán Cortés, bring down a powerful civilization of millions? The Aztec Empire controlled vast territories, commanded great armies, and built one of the most advanced cities of its time, Tenochtitlán. Yet in less than 2 years, this mighty empire fell to a handful of foreign invaders from across the sea. Was it pure military genius? Was it luck? Or was it something deeper? A perfect storm of circumstances that turned the impossible into reality. Let us break down the 5 critical reasons why 500 conquistadors succeeded, where logic says they should have failed. You might find that this story is less about brute force and more about the deadly combination of strategy, psychology, alliances, and unseen enemies. Advanced weaponry and military tactics. The Spanish arrived in the Americas with weapons the Aztecs had never seen before. Steel swords, iron armor, crossbows, muskets, and cannons gave the conquistadors a deadly edge in battle. Aztec warriors fought bravely and skillfully, but their weapons, primarily obsidian blades, wooden clubs, and spears, could not match the cutting power or durability of European steel. Spanish armor, made of iron and steel, made the conquistadors nearly invulnerable to most Aztec weapons. Even arrows and spears often bounced harmlessly off their breastplates and helmets. Horses, completely foreign to the Americas, gave the Spanish a mobile advantage. The sight of cavalry charges struck terror into enemy ranks who had never seen mounted soldiers before. Tactics also played a role. The Spanish fought in tight formations, used coordinated attacks, and exploited their firearms to break enemy lines. Aztec warfare was ritualistic, often aimed at capturing prisoners rather than killing enemies outright. This difference in combat goals gave the Spanish a brutal advantage in deadly, no-mercy warfare. Here is a chilling reality: technology alone does not win wars, but when combined with ruthless tactics and superior strategy, it can turn a small force into a devastating power. The power of native alliances. Though the Spanish are often portrayed as lone invaders, the truth is they never fought the Aztecs alone. From the moment they landed, Cortés sought out alliances with native peoples who hated Aztec rule. The Aztec Empire, powerful as it was, controlled its territories through fear, heavy tribute, and brutal military force. Many subjected tribes resented their overlords and were eager to rebel. The most important of these allies were the Tlaxcalans, fierce warriors who became key partners to the Spanish. They provided thousands of soldiers, supplies, and local knowledge that Cortés used to great effect. Other groups joined the alliance, swelling the Spanish forces far beyond their original numbers. With native allies by their side, the Spanish gained manpower, intelligence, and legitimacy. They turned a handful of Europeans into the leaders of a massive anti-Aztec coalition. In battle, it was often the native allies who bore the brunt of the fighting, guided by Spanish leadership and tactics. Think about this: sometimes, the greatest strength does not come from numbers or weapons, but from understanding how to turn enemies into allies. Cortés mastered this art, and it became one of the decisive factors in the fall of the Aztecs. Disease and the invisible enemy. Perhaps the deadliest weapon the Spanish brought was not steel or gunpowder, but something invisible: disease. Smallpox, measles, and other European diseases spread rapidly through the Americas after the arrival of the Spanish. The native populations, having no immunity, suffered catastrophic losses. When smallpox hit the Aztec Empire, it tore through cities, decimating entire communities. Warriors, leaders, priests, and even the Emperor Cuitlahuac fell victim to the disease. The sickness weakened the Aztec army, crippled their leadership, and caused widespread fear and chaos. The Spanish themselves often avoided the worst effects, as they had been exposed to these diseases back in Europe. This biological disaster gave the Spanish an overwhelming advantage, reducing Aztec resistance and shattering morale. And here is a grim thought: the Aztecs fought against weapons they could see, but it was the enemy they could not see that truly destroyed them. Disease was the silent conqueror that paved the way for Spanish victory. Psychological warfare and manipulation. Cortés was not just a soldier, he was a master manipulator and a keen observer of human behavior. He quickly learned how to exploit Aztec beliefs, fears, and political divisions to his advantage. The most famous example of this was how the Spanish arrival coincided with a prophecy about the return of the god Quetzalcoatl, a fair-skinned deity expected to come from the east. Some Aztecs believed Cortés was this god or his emissary, a belief that sowed doubt and hesitation among their leaders. Montezuma, the Aztec emperor, treated Cortés with cautious respect and even welcomed him into Tenochtitlan. This hesitation gave the Spanish a crucial foothold inside the heart of the empire. Cortés also manipulated rival factions within the empire, spreading rumors, offering bribes, and using divide and conquer tactics to weaken resistance. By understanding the fears and superstitions of his enemies, he kept them off balance and controlled the narrative of his conquest. Consider this: sometimes battles are won not by force of arms but by controlling minds. Cortés turned Aztec beliefs and internal divisions into weapons, showing that psychological warfare can be as deadly as any sword. The siege and fall of Tenochtitlan. The final blow came with the siege of Tenochtitlan, one of the most remarkable and brutal episodes in the conquest. After initial alliances and conflicts, the Spanish were driven out of the city in the famous event known as La Noche Triste, the Night of Sorrows. But Cortés regrouped, rebuilt his forces with the help of native allies, and returned with a plan to break the Aztec capital once and for all. Using brigantines, small warships built on the nearby lakes, the Spanish cut off supplies and reinforcements to the city. The siege turned into a grinding battle of attrition. Starvation, disease, and constant attacks weakened the Aztec defenders. Despite fierce resistance, the defenders of Tenochtitlan could not hold against the combined might of Spanish forces and tens of thousands of native allies. When the city finally fell, it marked not only the end of the Aztec Empire, but the collapse of organized native resistance in the region. The once great city was destroyed, its people slaughtered or enslaved, and its temples and palaces reduced to rubble. Here is a sobering reflection. The fall of Tenochtitlan was not just a military victory, it was the death of a civilization. The Spanish conquest ended the Aztec world and reshaped the Americas forever. How 500 conquistadors changed history. The fall of the Aztecs was no simple tale of a superior army defeating an inferior one. It was a deadly mix of advanced weaponry, strategic alliances, devastating disease, psychological manipulation, and relentless siege warfare. Hernán Cortés and his 500 conquistadors succeeded because they turned every possible advantage to their favor, exploiting the weaknesses of a vast empire that seemed, on the surface, impossible to defeat. The conquest of the Aztecs changed the course of history. It opened the door for Spanish colonization in the Americas, brought unimaginable wealth to Europe, and unleashed a wave of conquest and colonization that would reshape the world. But it also brought death, destruction, and the loss of cultures and civilizations that had thrived for centuries. And here is a lasting truth: history is often shaped not by the strongest alone, but by those who know how to use every weapon at their disposal, including the unseen ones. The story of the Aztecs' fall reminds us that power comes in many forms, and sometimes the smallest force can change the fate of millions. If you found this story of conquest and collapse compelling, watch our next video on how the Cold War was fought without a single bullet mostly. The patterns may surprise you. See you there.